Hi, I'm Rachel from Little Vintage Photography and Sunny 16 podcast. ILFORD have asked me to come along today and talk to you about the dodge and burn technique. This is something that you can do in the darkroom. It's a really simple process, but it's something that can be quite effective. So I've got some examples here. This is an image that I shot at a wedding. I took this on ILFORD HP5 at 400 ISO, and I had her stood near a window, so you can see that we've got this lovely soft light kind of casting in across her face and over her shoulders. On this example here, you can see that because of that light, we've got a loss of detail in the shoulder here, in the highlights, so we might want to bring those out a little bit more. And on this version, although she's quite nicely exposed, we've got a loss of detail in the shadow here, in the dark areas. So what we want to do is use a dodge and burn technique in order to burn in some areas that are a bit too light to give us a bit more detail, whilst preserving some of the other areas so that they don't end up too dark, so we can keep detail in the shadows as well. If I pop this one in, you can see that on this example, we've been able to retain some of the detail in the highlights and also in the shadows, whilst making sure that we've got a nice exposure on her face as well. I'll show you now the technique and let's look at some of the equipment that we'll use. Okay, so here we've got our negative. We've chosen the one that we're going to use. I'm just going to use very carefully my fingers to take out this strip of negatives. Just make sure that you hold it by the edges, because you may or may not have some sort of like special cotton gloves. Don't worry if you don't, as long as you keep your fingers out of the way. And I'm going to use my little air foofer, but I use that to just get rid of any little bits of dust that might have been attracted to the negative. So now we've got our nice clean negative. The negative holder is in the enlarger. We just slide this out. Now going to take the negative itself, shiny side up remember, and place that in the negative holder, and just very gently close that over to hold it in place. And just want to do a little double check and make sure I haven't got any dust or anything on there. You can use your air foofer again if you like. There we go. And we're just going to slot that back into the negative drawer there. Now we're going to bring in the easel and we're going to choose what size print we're going to have. I've set it for sort of a 6x4, which I'm going to do with a white border on a 7x5 piece of paper. This is the time that you want to choose what size your print is going to be, because if you were to adjust it afterwards, you'd end up moving the enlarger head up to make a bigger print, let's say. Your exposure times would be different. Now I've got my easel in place, I'm going to switch on the red light, which I do over here, and we'll have a little look at the negative. So I'm going to switch on the light on here just to give us a focus light, and I'm going to bring in my focus finder, pop that onto the image here and have a little look using the fine focus dial here and looking through the focus finder, making sure that I'm actually focusing up on the grain of the negative itself. So I've found the focus on the grain, so I know that's going to be pin sharp. I'm just going to double check my framing of the actual image and make sure that I'm happy with that. You can see where the areas are a little bit lighter and the areas are a bit darker, so we work out where we need to create a mask. You can actually create a mask using things like your hands. So I would perhaps use my hand like this, or you can make your own mask using something like black card. And I'm going to cut just a general shape that would work around the area of the negative that we can see that I want to mask out. That's the area that I will be dodging around. So now I've got my mask, it's worth putting it just over the top of where you can see your negative and checking where the edges of it are going to fall. You don't want it really close because you'll end up with a very defined outline. Instead, you want to keep it slightly away from the paper itself, and you also want to make sure that you're moving it as you do that, as if you're sprinkling sugar. That will help to feather the edges. I'm going to turn off my focus light so we can take the paper out of the packet. This is the paper we're going to be using. It's the ILFORD Multigrade RC. RC is for resin coated and it's the glossy. Depending on what kind of paper you're using, there'll be different textures on different sides. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to actually work out which side has got the emulsion on, but on something like this, you'll actually see a bit of a sheen because we're using the glossy. So what you want to do is make sure that you have it with the emulsion side facing up. That's going to go into my easel. I know that I've got that already set in the right place. I'm going to show you the way to do it if you don't have a timer on your enlarger. Some people do, some people don't. So what you can use is a timer on an app. Just make sure it's a darkroom timer specifically so that you haven't got any white light. The red light on here won't fog the paper. On the timer I've set it to 5 seconds because I know that's the total amount of time that I want that print exposure to be. And at 3.5 I will bring in my mask so that the final 1.5 seconds of that total 5 seconds has the mask on it. So, ready to go? 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, bringing in the mask. There we go. And that's it, simple as that. I've got my dodged and burnt print and I'm going to take it over now to developing. See how I did? So I've got my print. I'm just going to pop that over here on the dry surface. Get my gloves on. These are the nitrile gloves. It just means that these are ones that I can use safely with photographic chemicals. Okay, I'm going to get those on. I've also got my nice new shiny apron on, which I love. This was a Christmas present. I used the develop tray as the white tray, stop tray as a kind of like neutral grey, and the fixed tray is the red tray. That's how I do it. I also label them. Sometimes your trays aren't coloured. In that case, obviously make sure you label them. And I work left to right, so develop, stop and fix. After it's been fixed, I then pop it into a wash tray. That's basically just clear water or into the sink. With the trays, I also have corresponding tongs. It doesn't have to be the corresponding colour, but just make sure you have separate tongs for each of the trays. I'm going to start with my print. That's going to go into the developer tray, and it's going to go into 600ml of ILFORD multigrade that I've mixed up here. So I'm going to slide that in quite smoothly and then just start to agitate the bath, by which I mean rock it backwards and forwards gently, just to make sure that it's completely fully covered and that it's done relatively evenly as well. And you can start to see it developing, which is lovely. I think that's always really magical. It's a lovely, lovely moment whenever you see a print develop. Once it's been in for a minute in the developer tray, I use the corresponding developer tongs to lift out the print. I tend to hold it just with a corner, and that's going to go into the stop. I'm going to put it in upside down and just literally let it drop into there. Put those tongs back and then move to the stop tray. This means that we don't have cross-contamination, and that's going to be in there for 30 seconds, and then it'll go into the fix. Again, you can agitate that by moving it around. Again, you can use the clock on the wall, your watch, or a timer on a Darkroom app for that, just to make sure that you get that right. Once it's gone through the stop, again, I use the stop tongs to lift the print out and put them into the fix tray. Let it drip back into the stop bath, and then transfer it smoothly into the fix tray, and make sure that it's face down in the fix, because that gives it the best chance of making sure that it's fully coated with the fix. So it's been in the fix for 2 minutes now. I'm going to do the gram reveal and turn it over and see if we've got a photo. We've got a print! Hooray! It's always a nice moment. This is our print that we've done the dodge and burn technique on. We've got a bit more detail in the areas that were highlights before. I'm going to switch on the white light so we can see it properly and then get it into the wash. I'm just going to take it over now and put it into the wash tray. You don't actually have to have anything as fancy as this. This is just nice because we've got this here. If you needed to, you could just pop it into a separate little tray or bath of water and make sure that that's in there for at least 5 minutes, and then do a final rinse just under the tap. It's our final print. Hey. So that's it. That has been using the dodge and burn technique in order to achieve a particular look with this image of our bride stood next to a window. As you can see, we've now got a bit more detail in the highlights and a bit more detail in the shadows, whilst we've kept that lovely exposure on her face. I've used it in this instance for this particular artistic look, but you can also use it to repair some issues with images that you've got. Thanks very much for watching. You can check out ILFORD's other videos for more tips and techniques.